Welcome to the Quiet Seed. This is not a story about being fast, loud, or impressive. It is a story about growing slowly and growing well. Many of us live in a world that rewards speed. We are told to hurry, to compare, to prove ourselves early. When growth feels slow, we begin to doubt our value. When progress is quiet, we fear we are falling behind. This story gently offers another truth. The quiet seed follows a small seed that grows at its own pace. While others rise quickly and attract attention, this seed stays hidden, learning patience, building strength, and trusting time. What begins in darkness slowly becomes something steady, lasting, and deeply rooted. This book is for anyone who feels unseen, for anyone who is working quietly while others seem to move ahead, for anyone learning that rest, patience, and consistency are not weaknesses, but foundations. You will not find loud lessons here. You will not be rushed toward change. Instead, this story invites you to slow down, to listen, to remember that growth does not need an audience to be real, that becoming strong often happens long before anyone notices. As you listen, allow the story to unfold gently. Let it meet you where you are. Whether you are beginning again, waiting for clarity, or simply needing calm, this book is meant to remind you of something simple and true. Lasting things grow quietly. Thank you for listening with Book Fuel English. Now let us return to the soil where every meaningful journey begins. Chapter 1: Hidden Beginnings. Beneath the surface of the earth, where light never reached and sound moved slowly through layers of soil, a small seed rested in silence. It was pressed gently into the dark, surrounded by cool earth and thin threads of roots from plants that had lived before. Nothing about this place looked important. Nothing here looked alive. Yet this was where life always began. The seed did not know the sky. It did not know the sun or the wind. It had never seen color or shape. Its world was made of pressure and patience, of damp soil and waiting. Above it, the ground felt heavy, as if the earth itself was asking the seed to stay still. The seed obeyed, not because it understood, but because there was no other choice. Time passed in ways the seed could not measure. There were no days or nights underground, only slow changes. Sometimes the soil grew warmer, sometimes it cooled again. Sometimes water slipped down through tiny spaces and brushed against the seed's shell, then disappeared deeper into the earth. Each moment felt the same, yet each moment quietly carried the seed forward. The seed was not broken, it was not weak. Inside its small shell lived a careful design, a quiet plan shaped long before it was placed in the soil. But from the outside there was nothing to see. No movement, no sign of progress. If anyone had looked closely, they might have assumed the seed was empty or forgotten. Around it, other seeds rested as well. Some were larger, some were smaller, some lay closer to the surface, where the soil was thinner and the air easier to feel. The quiet seeds sensed them nearby, though it could not see them. It felt the slight shifts in the earth when they stirred, the gentle vibrations when they stretched against their shells. The seed listened. It always listened. In the darkness, it learned to notice small changes that others might ignore. It noticed how the soil held it firmly, keeping it safe. It noticed how the moisture softened its shell little by little. It noticed how stillness was not empty, but full of unseen work. At times, the seed wondered why nothing seemed to happen. It felt a slow pressure inside, a gentle urge to change, but it did not know what that change would look like. There was no voice to explain, no sign to follow, only a quiet sense that waiting was part of the process. The weight of the soil pressed down, steady and unmoving. The seed felt small beneath it. Not small in size, but small in presence. Nothing depended on it yet. Nothing noticed it. The earth did not speak its name. The seed existed without attention, without praise, without proof that it mattered. And yet deep inside, something remained calm. The seed did not panic. It did not struggle against the earth. It accepted the darkness, even though it did not understand it. There was a quiet trust forming, though the seed could not have named it. A feeling that this place, though unseen, was not wrong. Waiting was not easy. The seed felt time stretch, felt moments pile upon each other without clear meaning. Still it stayed. Still it endured. The seed did not know that many things in life begin this way, hidden and slow, unnoticed and uncertain. It only knew that it was here, and that here was where it had been placed. Above the seed, the world was already moving. Rain fell. Sunlight warmed the surface. Seasons shifted in ways the seed could not sense. Life continued loudly and visibly, while the seed remained in quiet preparation. The contrast did not trouble it yet. The seed had not learned to compare. In the darkness, the seed began to feel the first signs of change. Not growth, not movement, but readiness. Its shell softened further. The space inside it felt fuller, heavier with possibility. The seed did not celebrate this feeling. It did not fear it either. It simply noticed. There was no rush, no demand to appear, no pressure to prove anything. The seed's work for now was invisible. It was learning how to exist without being seen, how to prepare without being praised, how to trust a process that offered no explanations. This was the beginning, not the kind that could be pointed at or admired, but the kind that mattered most. A beginning built in silence, a beginning shaped by patience, a beginning that would one day support everything that followed, even if no one ever remembered where it started. And so the seed remained beneath the soil, unnoticed and uncelebrated, learning the quiet truth that all lasting growth begins in darkness. The seed did not question its worth because it had not yet learned how doubt was formed. Doubt often begins when something compares itself to what it can't see clearly. Underground, comparison had no shape. Each seed existed in its own small space, with its own measure of time. The quiet seed felt no competition, only presence. Occasionally the soil above shifted slightly. Tiny cracks formed and closed again. These movements were distant, unclear, but they carried hints of change. The seed sensed something beyond its reach was happening, though it could not imagine what that something was. It did not know that one day it would rise toward light, for now it belonged to the dark. There was comfort in being held by the earth. The soil did not rush the seed. It did not demand results. It allowed the seed to move at its own pace, offering protection without questions. In this hidden place, the seed learned that safety often comes before visibility, and that strength is built when no one is watching. The seed felt moments of heaviness, moments when the weight seemed endless. But even then, it did not feel hopeless. It felt unfinished. There is a difference between the two, though the seed could not explain it. Hope was not something it reached for. It was something that quietly stayed. Every small change inside the seed mattered. Each softening of the shell, each silent shift within, prepared it for something greater than it could imagine. The seed did not need to understand its purpose in order to move toward it. Understanding would come later, after growth had already begun. For now, the seed rested in its hidden beginning, unaware that this unseen chapter would one day be the reason it could stand strong above the ground. The darkness was not an ending. It was an opening, wide and patient, shaping a future that had not yet arrived. The earth remained quiet, but not empty. In its silence, the seed learned endurance without effort and patience without reward. Nothing asked it to hurry, nothing told it to stop. The seed simply existed, and in that existence, something essential was forming, slowly and carefully, preparing it for a life that would one day rise beyond the soil. This waiting was not wasted time, it was necessary time, shaping the seed into what it was meant to become, without rushing, without noise, fear. Chapter 2, Watching Others Rise. Change came to the soil before the quiet seed was ready for it. One moment, the underground world felt the same as always, still, close, patient. The next, subtle movements began to ripple through the earth. Tiny cracks opened above. Pressure shifted. The soil loosened in places where it had once been firm. Something was happening, and the quiet seed felt it before it understood it. Nearby seeds began to stir with new energy. They pushed upward with confidence, their shells splitting as they reached for something unseen. The quiet seed sensed their movement through the trembling soil. It did not move with them. It stayed where it was, feeling the change pass through its surroundings like a distant current. Soon one seed broke through the surface. The quiet seed could not see it, but it felt the release, the sudden absence of resistance above. The soil around that spot grew lighter, as if the earth itself had opened a door. Then another seed followed, and another. Each one rose quickly, leaving the darkness behind. The quiet seed remained underground, listening. As more seeds pushed upward, the soil became busy. Roots stretched. Tiny stems forced their way through. The earth, once calm and uniform, now held movement and urgency. The quiet seed noticed how quickly everything changed once growth began. It noticed how speed brought attention, even if no one spoke of it. It did not feel jealous, not yet, but it felt aware. The seed began to wonder why others were ready and it was not. It felt the same inner pressure, the same pull toward change, yet something held it back, or perhaps something guided it to stay. The seed could not tell the difference. Above the soil, the fast-growing plants greeted light for the first time. They stretched eagerly, their stems thin but proud. The sun warmed them, and the air carried their presence outward. They were visible now. They existed in a way the quiet seed did not. Underground, the quiet seed felt smaller than before. No one told the seed it was slow. No one said it was failing. Yet the idea formed on its own, quietly and without warning. The seed began to measure itself against movements it could only sense, not see. It listened to the excitement in the soil, to the restless energy of those who had risen, and it felt left behind. Comparison did not arrive as a sharp thought. It arrived gently, almost politely. A simple question formed in the seed's mind. Why not me? The seed examined itself as best it could. Its shell was softer than before. Its inside felt fuller, heavier with readiness. Nothing seemed wrong. Still, it had not risen. The seed began to wonder if readiness was not enough. Perhaps speed was what mattered. The soil seemed to reward those who moved quickly. The ones who broke through first received warmth and space. They breathed freely. They stood where others could notice them. The quiet seed remained hidden, surrounded by the same darkness that once felt safe. Waiting felt different now. Before, waiting had been calm. Now it felt uncertain. The seed had not changed, but its awareness had. It knew others were ahead, and that knowledge carried weight. The seed did not rush upward, but it felt the temptation to try. What if staying underground meant missing something important? What if growing slowly meant being forgotten? These thoughts did not shout. They whispered, and whispers are often harder to ignore. The quiet seed felt pressure inside, not the natural pressure of growth, but a new kind, a pressure to hurry, to match the pace of those who had already risen. The seed did not know whether this pressure came from the soil, from the world above, or from itself. It tried to push upward just a little. The attempt was brief and uncertain. The soil above was still heavy. The seed met resistance, firm and unyielding. It could push harder, but something inside hesitated. The movement felt wrong, not impossible, but premature. The seed stopped. Stillness returned, but it was no longer peaceful. The quiet seed now carried a question it had never held before. Was growth supposed to be fast? Was being seen the same as being successful? Above the soil, the early risers continued to stretch. Their leaves unfolded eagerly. They turned toward the sun, proud of their progress. The wind noticed them. The light touched them first. Their existence was undeniable. Underground, the quiet seed learned something new. Comparison does not need an audience. It grows quietly, in private spaces, fed by imagination rather than facts. No one told the quiet seed it was behind. Yet it felt behind. No one praised the others out loud. Yet the seed felt their advantage. Speed had become a measure, even though no one had agreed on it. The seed listened to the soil again, trying to return to its earlier calm. The earth still held it gently. Moisture still softened its shell. Nothing essential had been taken away. Yet the seed could not unfeel what it had noticed. Time passed. The soil settled into a new rhythm, half busy, half still. The quiet seed remained where it was, growing inward while others grew outward. The difference felt sharper now. But even as doubt formed, something else grew alongside it. Awareness. The seed began to understand that growth did not look the same for everyone. It did not fully accept this truth yet, but the idea had been planted. The quiet seed chose not to compete, not because it believed it was better, and not because it believed it was worse, but because it could not force itself to grow in a way that felt untrue. The seed stayed where it was, watching, listening, learning. Deep within, roots continued to form, slowly, carefully, without applause. The seed did not know whether this choice was wise or foolish. It only knew that rushing felt heavier than waiting, and so it remained underground, watching others rise, carrying a new question into the dark, a question that would shape everything that came next. Speed was visible, patience was not, and for the first time, the quiet seed wondered which one truly mattered. Chapter 3. The Fear of Being Left Behind. Time moved differently now. What once felt like gentle waiting began to feel like distance. The quiet seed could sense the passing of moments more clearly, not because the soil had changed, but because the seed had. Awareness made time heavier. Each pause felt longer. Each still moment carried a question. Above the ground, life continued to rise. The quiet seed felt it through the soil, the steady pull of roots stretching upward, the widening space where stems had broken free. The earth no longer felt evenly still. It was active in places, busy with growth that moved away from the darkness. The seed remained where it was, listening to a world that seemed to be leaving without it. Fear arrived quietly. It did not come as panic or despair. It came as a subtle unease, a tightening inside. The seed was not afraid of failing. It did not believe it was broken or incapable. The fear was softer and more unsettling than that. The seed feared being forgotten. What if nothing ever noticed it? What if the world above grew full without it, crowded with leaves and light, while it remained buried and unseen? The seed did not crave attention, but it feared absence. It feared becoming something that never mattered simply because it never appeared. This fear pressed inward. It did not scream. It weighed. The seed began to feel impatient, though it did not yet recognize the feeling by name. Waiting had once felt natural. Now it felt like delay. The seed noticed how often its thoughts drifted upward, imagining the surface, imagining the light it had never seen. It wondered if staying underground was a choice or a mistake. No one told the seed it was taking too long. No signal arrived from the soil to urge it forward. The pressure came from within. A quiet urgency formed, shaped by watching others rise while it stayed still. The seed began to push itself. At first, the effort was small, a gentle stretch, testing the space above. The soil resisted, firm but not harsh. The seed could feel that the earth was not ready to open for it yet. Normally, that resistance would have been enough to make it pause. This time, it pushed again. The movement was awkward. The seed strained against its shell, pressing upward with effort rather than readiness. Inside, tension replaced calm. The seed felt tight, compressed, as if trying to force a door that was meant to open on its own. The effort brought no progress, only discomfort. The seed stopped, exhausted by its own attempt. The soil settled again, unchanged. Nothing had moved except the seed itself, and even that movement had not brought it closer to the surface. For the first time, the seed felt stress. Stress did not feel like growth. It felt sharp and crowded. The seed's inner space, once steady and quiet, now felt restless. Thoughts circled without resolution. The seed wondered if trying harder was the answer, or if trying at all had been a mistake. It rested, but rest did not come easily. Moments passed, then more moments. Above, the early plants grew taller. Their roots expanded downward, brushing past the quiet seed's space without touching it. They were moving in a different direction now, upward and outward, while the quiet seed remained enclosed. The seed felt smaller again, not in worth, but in place. The world seemed larger, more advanced, more alive elsewhere. The fear of being left behind grew heavier, pressing against patience like a slow tide. The seed tried to understand this fear. It asked itself what it truly wanted. Did it want light, or did it want proof that it mattered? The seed could not separate the two. Light represented visibility, and visibility felt like belonging. To remain unseen felt like fading before ever appearing. The seed pushed again. This time the effort was stronger. It pressed upward with determination rather than instinct. The shell strained. The inner pressure increased sharply. The movement felt urgent, forced, unbalanced. The soil above resisted more firmly now, as if warning the seed to stop. Pain followed, not physical pain, but something close to it, a sense of tearing, of strain that did not feel right. The seed pulled back instinctively, startled by the discomfort. It understood something then. Growth was not supposed to hurt this way. The seed had felt pressure before, the slow, steady pressure of becoming ready. That pressure had felt natural, even calm. This new pressure was different. It was rushed. It was anxious. It came from fear, not from readiness. The seed rested again, shaken by the realization. Trying to grow faster had not helped. It had only made the waiting harder. The seed had not moved closer to the surface. It had only moved further from peace. Stillness returned, but now it carried understanding. The seed began to see that impatience did not shorten the journey. It only made the journey heavier. Forcing growth did not create strength. It created tension, weakness, and confusion. The seed thought of the others above, though it could not see them. It imagined their leaves reaching light, their stems swaying in the air. They were visible, but the seed wondered if they were ready for everything that visibility would bring. The seed did not judge them. It simply observed. Deep inside, the quiet seed felt something steady again, a reminder of its earlier calm. It felt the soil holding it, firm and protective. It felt moisture easing its shell slowly, patiently in its own time. The seed realized that fear had made it forget what the soil had already taught it. Waiting was not abandonment, it was preparation. Being unseen was not the same as being unimportant. The seed allowed itself to rest fully now, without pushing. The urge to hurry softened. The fear did not disappear, but it loosened its grip. The seed understood that growth demanded cooperation, not force. Time passed. The soil remained steady. The seed remained underground. But something had changed. The seed no longer pushed against the weight. It began to work with it. The pressure inside returned to its earlier rhythm. Slow, steady, purposeful. The seed felt less crowded, less strained. Space opened again within. The fear of being left behind did not vanish in a single moment. It faded gradually, replaced by a quieter awareness. Moving too soon could be just as harmful as never moving at all. The seed learned that progress cannot be demanded, it must be allowed. And so beneath the soil, unseen and patient, the quiet seed continued its work, not rushing toward the surface, not forcing its way forward, but preparing itself carefully for the moment when growth would feel right, not desperate. The world above continued without noticing. The seed remained, and in that stillness, true progress quietly resumed. Chapter 4: Learning to Stay Still. After the strain of pushing too soon, the quiet seed did something it had not truly done before. It stayed still. Not the kind of stillness that comes from exhaustion or defeat, but a deeper kind, one that comes from acceptance. The seed no longer pressed upward. It no longer measured time by what it lacked. It rested within the soil, allowing itself to exist without urgency. At first, this stillness felt uncomfortable. The seed had grown used to tension, to the quiet pull of impatience inside. Without that pressure, there was a strange emptiness, as if something important were missing. The seed wondered if stillness meant stopping altogether. It feared becoming passive, becoming stuck forever beneath the earth. But the soil did not treat stillness as an ending. Moisture continued to seep gently through the ground, touching the seed's shell with steady care. The earth held its temperature, neither too warm nor too cold. The quiet seed felt these small consistencies, these signs that life was still moving, even if it was moving slowly. Nothing changed on the surface. Above, the early plants continued to grow. Leaves widened, stems stretched, shadows shifted with the sun. The world remained active and visible, full of motion and sound. From the seed's hidden place, all of that felt distant, like a story happening somewhere else. Yet beneath the soil, something important had begun. The seed's shell softened further, not from effort, but from patience. Without the strain of forcing itself forward, the seed's inner space felt calmer, more open. Growth resumed, quietly and naturally, guided by timing rather than fear. The seed began to notice the difference. When it had pushed before, everything inside felt tight and crowded. Now growth felt gentle, almost effortless. The changes were small and slow, but they were steady. The seed did not need to hurry them. They happened because conditions were right. Stillness, the seed realized, was not the absence of movement. It was the absence of struggle. The seed began to understand that rest was not wasted time. It was active in its own way. While the seed appeared unchanged from the outside, deep within, structures were forming. Roots extended carefully, finding stable paths through the soil. Strength was being built where no one could see it. The soil supported this work without interruption. It did not rush the seed. It did not demand proof of progress. It simply offered what the seed needed, moment by moment. In this quiet partnership, the seed learned something new about growth, that it often requires cooperation, not force. Time passed again, but this time it felt different. Moments no longer piled up heavily. Waiting no longer felt like delay. The seed began to experience time as space, room to become what it was meant to be. Each moment of stillness added to that space, expanding possibility rather than limiting it. The seed listened closely to its surroundings. It felt tiny insects move through the soil nearby. It felt roots from other plants weaving around it, creating a network beneath the ground. The underground world was not empty or inactive. It was busy with quiet life, all of it moving slowly, deliberately, without urgency. The seed was part of this hidden rhythm. It realized that many important things happened out of sight. Roots did not grow in the open. Foundations were not built in daylight. Strength began where attention rarely reached. This understanding brought calm. The seed stopped asking when it would rise. It stopped imagining the surface with longing. Instead, it focused on where it was, on what it was doing now, on becoming ready rather than becoming visible. Stillness became a choice, not a condition. There were moments when doubt returned. Brief flashes of worry drifted through the seed's awareness. Was it staying still for too long? Would the moment ever come? These thoughts appeared, but they no longer took control. The seed acknowledged them and let them pass. It trusted the process more than the questions. The seed began to feel gratitude for the darkness. In the absence of light, there were fewer distractions. Nothing demanded performance. Nothing required comparison. The seed could grow inward without interruption. The soil protected it from storms above. It shielded the seed from winds it could not yet withstand. What once felt like confinement now felt like care. Stillness revealed its purpose. The seed realized that rushing toward visibility before being ready would have exposed it to forces it could not survive. Remaining underground allowed it to prepare quietly, building resilience long before it would be tested. Preparation, the seed learned, was not dramatic. It was patient repetition, small changes adding up over time. Strength layered gently upon strength, nothing sudden, nothing loud, just consistency. As days passed, or what felt like days, The seed felt more balanced. Its inner growth aligned naturally with the soil around it. There was no longer a sense of fighting the environment. The seed worked with it. This harmony felt right. The seed did not know how long this phase would last. It did not need to know. It understood now that not every stage required answers. Some stages required presence. Being still did not mean giving up on the future. It meant trusting it. The seed thought of the earlier pressure it had felt, the urge to push forward too soon. That pressure now felt distant, almost foreign. The seed recognized it as fear, not instinct. It learned to tell the difference. Instinct moved slowly and steadily. Fear rushed. By choosing stillness, the seed chose instinct. The underground world remained quiet, but not silent. There was life everywhere, just below awareness. The seed felt connected to that life, part of something larger than its own timeline. Waiting no longer felt like punishment. It felt like alignment. The seed accepted that growth had seasons, and not all of them involved movement toward the surface. Some seasons required rooting, strengthening, and resting. Ignoring those seasons would weaken everything that followed. As the seed rested, it felt a quiet confidence forming. Not confidence in outcome, but confidence in process. A sense that it did not need to hurry to become worthy. Worth was already present, even here, even now. The seed was still unseen, but it no longer felt unnoticed. The soil knew it. The earth supported it. And the seed itself recognized its own work, even if no one else ever would. Stillness became fertile ground. In that hidden place beneath the surface, the quiet seed continued to grow. Not upward, not outward, but inward and downward, building the strength that would one day allow it to rise without fear. Nothing had changed on the surface. Everything was changing underneath. Chapter 5: Strength Built in Silence. Deep beneath the soil, where no eyes could reach and no voices could interrupt, the quiet seed continued its work. Nothing about it looked impressive. From the surface, there was still no sign of life. No green, no movement, no proof that anything was happening at all. To anyone who measured progress by what could be seen, the seed might as well have not existed. But underground, the seed was busy. Instead of pushing upward, it began to grow downward. Tiny roots reached out slowly from its base, not in haste, but with care. Each root searched the soil gently, feeling its way forward. The seed did not rush this process. It allowed each extension to happen when the path felt right, when the earth offered enough space and support. Root by root, it anchored itself. The work was quiet and deliberate. There was no sudden change, no moment of excitement. Growth happened in small decisions, turning slightly to avoid resistance, pausing when the soil felt too tight, continuing when it felt welcoming. The seed learned to listen closely, not only to the earth around it, but to itself. This kind of growth required patience. Roots did not respond well to force. When pushed too hard, they weakened or broke. When guided gently, they strengthened. The seed learned this through experience, adjusting its pace without frustration. It discovered that patience was not passive waiting, but active attention. The roots grew deeper. With each extension, the seed felt more stable. The soil no longer felt like a weight pressing down, but like a structure holding it upright. The deeper the roots went, the less the seed worried about what was happening above. Silence surrounded this work. There were no signs of effort, no recognition. No one noticed the careful shaping of strength beneath the surface. And yet this was the most important work the seed would ever do. The seed began to understand discipline. Discipline was not about pushing harder or faster. It was about returning to the work each moment, even when there was no reward, even when nothing seemed to change. Discipline meant continuing quietly, trusting that consistency mattered more than intensity. Each day, or what felt like a day, the seed returned to the same task: extend, pause, adjust, hold. The repetition did not feel dull. It felt grounding. Through repetition, the seed found steadiness. Emotional grounding formed alongside physical roots. As the seed grew deeper into the soil, its thoughts grew steadier. Fear loosened its grip. The urgency that once crowded its inner space faded. In its place came calm focus. The seed no longer wondered constantly about the surface. It accepted that its work belonged here, for now. The underground world supported this grounding. Moisture fed the roots steadily. Minerals strengthened them. The soil offered resistance where strength was needed, and softness where flexibility mattered. The seed learned to adapt without stress, to respond rather than react. This adaptability became another kind of strength. Above ground, the fast-growing plants continued to stretch and display their leaves. They caught the sun and the wind. They were admired by passing eyes. But their roots, shallow and hurried, spread thinly through the upper soil. The quiet seed did not know this yet. It did not compare anymore. It did not measure itself against others. Its attention stayed inward and downward, focused on building something lasting rather than something visible. This focus required restraint. There were moments when the seed felt the familiar pull toward the surface, a faint memory of wanting to be seen. But now that pull no longer controlled it. The seed understood that leaves could wait. Roots could not. Leaves might impress. Roots sustain. The seed learned that true preparation often looks like delay. To the outside world, it would appear inactive. To those who valued quick results, it would seem unmotivated or slow. But beneath the surface, the seed was becoming unshakable. Silence protected this process. Without noise, the seed could concentrate. Without attention, it could develop freely. There was no pressure to perform, no expectation to hurry. The seed realized that silence was not emptiness. It was space. Space to grow correctly. The roots continued to branch out, creating a network of support. Each branch strengthened the others. The deeper they went, the more balanced the seed felt. Stability replaced uncertainty. The seed began to trust itself, not because it had proven anything, but because it had stayed with the work long enough to feel its effects. Trust grew quietly, built from consistency rather than success. Learning happened without instruction. The seed learned where to place its energy and where to conserve it. It learned when to push slightly and when to stop. It learned that growth did not require constant effort, only steady commitment. This learning could not have happened above ground. In the open air, distractions would have pulled the seed in too many directions. The underground world allowed focus. It demanded patience and rewarded it with strength. The seed felt more grounded with each passing moment. Grounded did not mean heavy, it meant secure. It meant knowing that no sudden change above could easily disturb what had been carefully built below. The seed understood now why it had needed to wait. If it had rushed upward earlier, its roots would have been weak. It might have stood tall briefly, but it would not have endured. The seed saw this truth clearly, even without seeing the world above. Silence continued to surround it. No one praised the roots. No one noticed their reach or strength. Yet these unseen structures would one day determine everything. The seed's ability to stand, to endure storms, to offer shade, to survive time. The seed did not resent the invisibility. It accepted that some of the most important work in life happens without witnesses. That preparation often looks like nothing to those who are not paying close attention. The seed was no longer impatient. It felt aligned with its purpose, even if that purpose remained unnamed. It trusted that when the time came to rise, it would do so with confidence rather than fear. For now, silence remained its teacher. In that silence, the seed grew strong. Root by root, moment by moment, unseen and steady, it built a foundation that would not easily be shaken. And though no leaf had yet touched the air, the seed was already becoming what it needed to be: stable, grounded, and ready for whatever waited beyond the soil. The strongest foundations, it learned, are always built where few think to look. Chapter 6: When Fast Growth is Tested. The change came without warning. One moment, the world above the soil felt familiar, warm, bright, predictable. The next, everything shifted. The quiet seed sensed it before it happened, through the deep roots that now connected it firmly to the earth. The soil tightened slightly, then loosened. Pressure moved in uneven waves. Something heavy was approaching. Above ground, the sky darkened. Wind arrived first, rushing across the field with sudden force. It bent young stems that had only recently learned how to stand. Leaves fluttered wildly, unprepared for such movement. The air, once gentle, became restless and sharp. Then the rain came. It did not fall softly at first. It struck the ground hard, pressing soil downward, filling spaces too quickly. Water pooled where the earth could not absorb it fast enough. The surface, once dry and welcoming, became unstable. The fast-growing plants felt the change immediately. Their stems, tall and thin, swayed violently. They had risen quickly, eager to meet the sun, but their roots had not gone deep. They reached wide instead of down, spreading thinly through the upper soil. Now, as the wind pushed and the rain softened the ground, they struggled to hold their position. Some leaned sharply to one side. Others twisted under the pressure, their leaves tangled, their balance uncertain. A few snapped, their fragile stems unable to handle the force. They had grown fast, but they had not grown strong. The quiet seed felt the storm differently. Deep underground, its roots held firm. They wrapped securely through layers of soil, gripping tightly, adapting to the shifting earth. The pressure from above traveled downward, but it did not overwhelm. The seed felt the force, acknowledged it, and remained steady. It did not celebrate this stability. There was no pride in what was happening above. The seed felt no satisfaction in the struggle of others. Instead, it felt awareness. The storm was not cruel. It was not selective. It treated every plant the same. The difference lay not in the storm, but in what each plant had prepared for. The wind grew stronger. Some of the tallest plants, once admired for their height, began to fall. Their shallow roots tore free from the soil, exposed and fragile. The rain washed away the earth that had barely held them. They collapsed, not because they were wrong to grow, but because they had grown without balance. The quiet seed remained unseen, but unshaken. Its roots tightened instinctively, adjusting to the movement of the soil. Where the ground softened, they reached deeper. Where pressure increased, they held steady. The seed did not resist the storm. It worked with the earth through it. This was resilience. Resilience did not mean avoiding difficulty, it meant being prepared for it. Above ground, the storm passed as suddenly as it had arrived. The rain softened, the wind slowed, the sky began to clear, leaving behind silence and scattered damage. The field looked different now. Plants that once stood tall lay bent or broken. Some leaned awkwardly, trying to recover. Others remained upright but weakened, their stems scarred, their roots exposed. The speed that had lifted them quickly had not given them time to prepare for pressure. The quiet seed sensed the stillness return. Beneath the soil, it rested in its place, unchanged in position, but changed in understanding. The storm had revealed something important, not as a lesson forced upon it, but as a truth observed. Growth alone was not enough. Speed alone was not strength. The seed remembered its earlier impatience, the times it had pushed against the soil, wishing to rise faster. It imagined what might have happened if it had succeeded then, before its roots were ready. The thought was unsettling. Had it rushed upward, it might have stood tall during calm days. It might have been admired briefly, but when the storm came, it would have faced it unprepared. The seed felt gratitude, not loud or emotional, but deep and steady. Gratitude for the waiting, gratitude for the silence, gratitude for the work no one had seen. Above ground, some plants tried to recover. They stretched back toward the light, adjusting their broken angles. A few would survive, others would not. The storm had not judged them. It had simply revealed the limits of their preparation. The quiet seed did not think of this as punishment. There was no blame in the wind, no intention in the rain. The challenge had come because challenges always come. What mattered was not how quickly something had grown, but how well it had prepared to be tested. The seed understood now why preparation happened underground. Strength needed privacy to form. It needed time without pressure to perform. The seed's roots, built slowly and carefully, had given it something speed never could: stability. The soil around the quiet seed began to settle again. Spaces filled in. Water drained downward. The earth regained its balance. The seed felt its roots relax slightly, no longer braced against force. Calm returned. Above, the field began its slow recovery. Sunlight touched bent leaves gently, as if offering reassurance. The world moved on, as it always did. The quiet seed remained beneath the surface, unchanged in position, but transformed in certainty. It no longer wondered whether slow growth was a weakness. It no longer questioned the value of preparation. The storm had answered those questions clearly, without words. Speed could create height. Preparation created endurance. The seed accepted this truth fully now. It did not rush to rise after the storm. It did not feel urgency to take advantage of cleared space above. It stayed where it was, continuing its work beneath the soil, building quietly on what had already proven strong. The challenge had passed, but it would not be the last. The seed understood that more storms would come in time, more pressure, more uncertainty. And when they did, it would meet them the same way, not by resisting, not by rushing, but by relying on what had been built in silence. Above ground, attention would return to new growth soon enough. Fresh stems would rise, leaves would unfold. The world would admire what it could see. Below, the quiet seed continued to prepare. It did not need the storm to validate its path, but having witnessed it, the seed felt grounded in its choice. Slow preparation had not kept it safe from challenge. It had made it capable of withstanding it, and that, the seed now knew, was the difference between growing fast and growing well. Chapter 7. Understanding Loss Without Pride. After the storm, the field grew quiet in a different way. The wind had passed. The rain had softened into memory, but the stillness that followed carried weight. Above the soil, shapes lay changed. Some plants leaned at unfamiliar angles. Some rested against the ground, unable to rise again. The order that had once felt certain was now uneven. The quiet seed sensed all of this through the soil. It felt the absence where roots had once been firm. It felt loosened earth where something had been pulled away. The underground world, usually steady and continuous, now held gaps, empty spaces where life had ended or changed direction. The seed did not feel relief. It did not think I was right. It did not feel proud of its own stability. Instead, it felt a slow, thoughtful awareness settle within it. The storm had revealed more than strength. It had revealed cost. Every path had won. The fast-growing plants had not chosen poorly out of carelessness or arrogance. They had simply chosen differently. Their path valued immediacy, light, and quick expression. It had given them early visibility and rapid growth. But that same path had left them exposed when pressure arrived. The seed understood this without judgment. It remembered its own impatience, the moments when it had wanted to rush upward, when it had believed speed might be the answer. The difference between itself and the fallen plants felt small, not large, a matter of timing, a matter of restraint. This realization softened something inside the seed. Compassion grew naturally, without effort. The seed felt no separation between itself and those who had struggled. It did not place itself above them. It saw their fall not as failure, but as consequence, a result of choices shaped by environment, urgency, and opportunity. Loss, the seed realized, was not proof of weakness. It was proof of risk. Some plants had grown quickly because they needed to. Some had taken advantage of early light because it was available. Their path had offered rewards before it revealed its limits. The seed did not believe they had been foolish. It believed they had been human in their own way, responding to the world as it appeared to them. The soil carried these stories quietly. Beneath the surface, roots from fallen plants slowly returned to the earth, breaking down, feeding the ground that remained. Even in loss, there was contribution. Even in endings, there was purpose. The seed felt humbled by this. It understood now that survival was not a victory over others. It was a responsibility. To endure meant to witness change without becoming hardened by it. Humility settled in. The seed did not think itself wiser. It did not feel chosen or special. It recognized that its stability came from patience and circumstance, not superiority. Had conditions been different, had pressure arrived earlier or later, outcomes might have changed. This understanding kept pride from forming. Above ground, a few plants struggled to stand again. They bent slowly toward the light, adjusting their shape, learning new ways to exist. Their growth would never look the same, but it was not over. The seed felt respect for their effort. Resilience took many forms. Some stood tall by growing slowly. Others survived by adapting after falling. The seed saw value in both. There was no single correct way to grow, only different costs paid at different times. The seed remained still, reflecting. It understood that awareness was deeper than judgment. Awareness allowed learning without blame. It allowed growth without comparison. Through awareness, the seed could observe without distancing itself emotionally. This was emotional maturity. The seed felt its roots holding steady, but it did not cling to that steadiness as identity. It did not define itself by what it had avoided. It defined itself by how it responded. It chose empathy. In the soil, nutrients shifted, redistributed by the storm. The earth continued its work of balance. Nothing was wasted, nothing was permanent. The seed learned that loss did not end a story, it reshaped it. Some plants would not return. Their absence would create space for others. Their remains would nourish new life. Their contribution did not end with their fall. This understanding deepened the seed's patience. It realized that growth was not only about becoming more. Sometimes it was about letting go. Sometimes it was about accepting that not all journeys last the same length. The seed felt gratitude again, not for surviving but for understanding. Understanding made it gentler, less rigid, more open. It no longer needed to prove that slow growth was better. It simply recognized that it was right for it. Others had grown fast because that path had felt right for them. Each path carried both opportunity and cost. The seed accepted this fully. Above ground, time continued. New leaves would grow, old ones would fade. The field would change again and again. Nothing stayed fixed for long. Below, the quiet seed remained rooted, observing without judgment, holding space for loss without pride. It learned that true strength included the ability to witness struggle without becoming cold, to endure without becoming arrogant, and to grow without measuring worth against the misfortune of others. This lesson did not make the seed louder or faster, it made it deeper. And in that depth, the seed continued its quiet preparation, now guided not only by patience, but by compassion, a quality that would one day shape how it stood in the world above. Loss had passed through the field. Wisdom remained beneath it. Chapter 8, The Courage of a Small Step. For a long time, nothing seemed to change. The quiet seed remained beneath the soil, steady and grounded, continuing its unseen work. Its roots were now strong and well spread, holding firmly to the earth. The pressure inside the seed felt different, not urgent, not anxious, but gently insistent, like a door that no longer resisted being opened. This feeling was new. It was not driven by fear or comparison. It did not come from watching others rise or fall. It came from alignment. The seed felt ready, not because it wanted to be seen, but because it no longer needed to stay hidden. The soil seemed to know this too. Above the seed, the earth loosened slightly, not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to make space. The resistance that had once felt firm now felt cooperative. The seed sensed it immediately. This time the signal was clear. It was time to move. The seed did not rush. It did not push with force or impatience. It extended upward carefully, guided by instinct rather than urgency. The movement felt natural, almost effortless, as if the soil itself were assisting rather than resisting. Slowly the seed broke through the surface. The moment was quiet. No one noticed. There was no sudden burst of color or dramatic change in the field. A small shoot appeared, thin, pale, and fragile looking. Compared to the taller plants around it, it seemed insignificant. But to the seed, this moment carried weight. This was the first time it had touched the open air, the first time it felt sunlight directly, warming its surface. The first time it sensed space above rather than pressure. The seed did not stretch immediately toward the light. It paused, adjusting to this new environment. The air felt lighter than the soil, less predictable. The seed felt exposed, aware that it was no longer protected in the same way. Still, it did not retreat. This small step forward required courage, not the loud kind of courage that demands attention, but a quiet courage, the courage to appear without certainty, to grow without assurance of success, to accept vulnerability after long preparation. The shoot remained small. It did not grow quickly. It did not try to match the height of others. Its first movement above ground was careful and restrained, as if remembering everything it had learned beneath the soil. The seed understood something important in that moment. Growth did not need to be impressive to be meaningful. The small shoot bent slightly with the breeze, learning how to respond rather than resist. It did not stand rigid or proud. It adapted gently, guided by the strength hidden below. Above ground, the field continued as usual. Taller plants cast shadows. Leaves overlapped. Attention rested on what was already visible and established. The new shoot did not draw interest, and that was enough. The seed felt no disappointment at being overlooked. It had not risen to be admired. It had risen because it was ready. The timing mattered more than the reaction. The seed remembered its earlier fears, the worry of being left behind, the urge to rush. Standing here now, even briefly, it saw how unnecessary those fears had been. The surface had waited. The world had not closed its doors. There was room. The seed focused on staying present. It absorbed light slowly, carefully. It allowed warmth to strengthen it without overwhelming it. The roots below continued their steady work, feeding the small shoot with balance and support. Every part of the seed worked together now, above and below, visible and hidden. The seed did not measure progress by height, it measured it by stability, by how calmly it could stand, by how well it could remain upright without strain. Each day, or what felt like a day, the shoot grew a little stronger, not much taller but firmer, more aware of its surroundings, more confident in its place. The seed learned to appreciate small progress. It understood that this modest beginning above ground was not a limitation. It was a reflection of everything that had come before. Slow, careful preparation had shaped a growth that did not need to rush. The seed trusted this pace. There were moments when the seed noticed taller plants nearby. Their leaves were wide, their presence obvious, but comparison no longer took root. The seed had learned that size was not the same as readiness. This was its moment, and it was enough. The courage of this small step lay not in its visibility, but in its intention. The seed had chosen to rise without forcing itself, to appear without pretending to be more than it was. That choice mattered. The seed felt a quiet satisfaction, not pride, not excitement, but calm assurance. It had honored its own timing. It had moved when ready, not when pressured. The surface no longer felt like a place to fear. It felt like a continuation of the journey, not a destination. The seed knew there would be challenges ahead. Wind, sun, storms yet to come. But it also knew that its roots were ready. Whatever happened above, it was supported below. This understanding brought peace. The seed did not celebrate loudly. It did not mark this moment as an ending or a triumph. It simply acknowledged it as progress, small, steady, and true. Sometimes growth begins not with a leap, but with a single careful step. And sometimes, that step matters more than all the speed that came before. The seed stood quietly in the light, modest and unremarkable to passing eyes, yet deeply aligned with itself. It had not grown fast. It had grown well, and that was enough to continue. Chapter 9. Letting Go of Comparison. As days passed above the soil, the quiet seed settled into its new place in the open air. The small shoot stood among taller plants, feeling the movement of wind and the warmth of sunlight in ways it never had before. The world felt wider here, less contained, and at times overwhelming. At first, comparison returned without invitation. The seed noticed the height of others. It noticed how quickly some leaves spread, how confidently certain stems leaned into the light. Nearby plants seemed to claim space easily, their presence unquestioned. The quiet seed, still modest in size, felt its smallness again, not as fear, but as awareness. But something had changed. The seed did not react as it once had. Instead of judging itself, it paused. It noticed the familiar tightening that comparison brought and chose not to follow it. The seed remembered the cost of that habit, the impatience, the strain, the loss of peace. This time it turned inward. Rather than measuring itself against others, the seed began to listen, not to the noise of the field, but to the elements that directly sustained it. It listened to the warmth of the sun as it touched its leaves, not demanding more light than it could absorb. It listened to the rain as it soaked gently into the soil, feeding the roots below. It listened to the earth itself, firm and supportive beneath it. These were the voices that mattered. The seed realized that comparison had never helped it grow. It had only distracted it from what it needed. By focusing on others, the seed had overlooked its own signals. When to rest, when to stretch, when to hold steady. Now it paid attention. The sun did not ask the seed to grow faster. It offered light freely, letting the seed take what it could. The rain did not rush the seed upward. It nourished the soil patiently. The earth did not push the seed to compete. It provided stability and space. None of these forces compared the seed to anything else. They worked with the seed as it was. This understanding softened something deep inside. The seed felt accepted by the world in a way it had not before, not because it had achieved anything, but because it existed. Self-acceptance grew quietly. The seed stopped wondering whether it was behind. It stopped imagining where it should be. Instead, it focused on where it was. Each moment became simpler, each decision clearer. The seed learned to feel its own rhythm. It noticed how its leaves responded to light, how they angled gently without strain. It noticed when its stem needed rest, bending slightly rather than forcing itself upright. It noticed how its roots continued their steady work below, maintaining balance. This awareness brought peace. Peace did not mean comfort all the time. There were still moments of challenge, hot days, dry soil, shifting shadows. But these moments no longer felt personal. They were conditions to respond to, not judgments to fear. The seed understood now that growth was not a race. Each plant in the field responded to its own conditions, its own timing, its own design. Comparing one path to another ignored these differences. The seed did not need to be taller to be complete. It needed to be aligned. By letting go of comparison, the seed freed energy it had once spent on doubt. That energy returned to growth, quiet, steady, and sustainable. The seed noticed how calm made everything clearer. Without constant comparison, the world felt less crowded. The seed could sense subtle changes in the air, small shifts in temperature, gentle variations in light. These details had been there all along, but comparison had drowned them out. Now, attention sharpened. The seed felt more connected to the field as a whole, not separated by competition. It recognized that every plant contributed something different: shade, shelter, beauty, nourishment. There was room for all of it. The seed no longer asked whether it was enough. That question had dissolved on its own. Instead, it asked simpler questions. What do I need right now? What does this moment require? These questions led to action without anxiety, to growth without force. The seed stood quietly, not trying to stand out. It trusted that its presence had value even without comparison. It trusted that its presence had value even without comparison. It trusted the soil beneath it, the light above it, and the pace within it. Peace deepened. The seed realized that comparison had been a habit, not a truth. And like any habit, it could be released with awareness and choice. By shifting attention inward, the seed found freedom. Freedom from measuring, freedom from rushing, freedom from pretending to be something it was not. This freedom did not make the seed stop growing. It made growth easier. The seed continued to rise slowly, almost without noticing. There was no dramatic change, no sudden leap. Progress blended into presence, and presence became enough. The field remained busy. Plants continued to grow, compete, and fade. But the quiet seed stood calmly among them, no longer pulled by their pace or distracted by their height. It listened to the sun, it listened to the rain, it listened to the soil, and in that listening, the seed found its own voice, steady, grounded, and at peace. Comparison faded into the background, replaced by quiet attention. The seed was no longer trying to become someone else. It was becoming itself, and that was where peace truly began. Chapter 10. Growing Through Quiet Seasons. Time did not move in sharp moments anymore. It moved in seasons. After the first days above the soil, the quiet plant settled into a rhythm that felt almost ordinary. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden growth surprised the field. No one paused to notice the small plant standing among taller stems. Life continued, steady and unremarkable, and so did the plant. Days passed where the sun rose and fell without bringing visible change. The plant absorbed light, rested, and held its position. Some mornings felt warm and encouraging. Others felt dull, covered by clouds that dimmed the sky. Rain came gently, then not at all. Wind moved through the field without ceremony. From the outside, it looked like nothing was happening. The plant did not grow taller quickly. Its leaves did not suddenly widen. There were no signs that would impress anyone watching from a distance. This was a season of little change, a season many misunderstood. But beneath the surface, endurance was forming. The plant continued to show up to its own life each day. It lifted its leaves toward the light when light appeared. It conserved energy when the sun hid behind clouds. It adjusted slightly to the wind, bending without breaking. These actions were small, repeated, and easy to overlook. Yet each one mattered. Consistency shaped the plant quietly. By responding to each day as it came, rather than waiting for ideal conditions, the plant learned stability. It did not demand rapid growth. It focused on remaining present. The roots below continued their steady work. They extended deeper, not aggressively, but persistently. When soil hardened, they waited. When space opened, they moved forward. Their progress was invisible, but essential. Each quiet effort strengthened the plant's ability to endure what came next. The plant learned something important during these uneventful days. Growth did not always announce itself. Some seasons existed not to accelerate progress, but to test commitment, to see whether the plant would continue to care for itself even when rewards were absent, to see whether it would remain attentive when nothing obvious was gained. This was the work of endurance. Endurance did not feel exciting, it felt repetitive. It required patience without praise and effort without immediate result. The plant did not feel inspired every day. Some days felt heavy, slow, and uncertain. But the plant remained. It stood through long afternoons when the heat pressed down without relief. It stood through cool nights when moisture settled quietly on its leaves. It stood through days when the field felt unchanged, as if time itself had paused. The plant learned that showing up mattered more than feeling motivated. Progress continued, even when it could not be measured easily. The plant's stem thickened slightly. Its leaves became more efficient, learning how to collect light without strain. Its balance improved. Small adjustments accumulated over time, shaping strength gradually. Nothing dramatic happened, and that was the point. The plant began to understand that dramatic change was not required for meaningful growth. In fact, dramatic change often distracted from what truly mattered. Slow improvement created reliability. Steady effort created trust in oneself. The quiet seasons taught the plant discipline. Discipline was not harsh or rigid. It was gentle commitment, a willingness to continue caring even when growth felt invisible, a decision to stay present instead of searching constantly for proof. The plant no longer waited for confirmation that it was growing. It trusted the process it had chosen. Trust replaced urgency. Other plants in the field changed around it. Some grew quickly and then slowed. Some faded as the season shifted. Some struggled when conditions were no longer favorable. The field evolved, responding to time in unpredictable ways. The quiet plant did not judge these changes. It remained focused on its own rhythm. It had learned that comparison during quiet seasons was especially tempting. When nothing seemed to be happening, the urge to measure progress against others grew stronger. But the plant resisted that urge. It remembered that quiet seasons were not empty. They were formative. They shaped character more than visibility ever could. The plant learned to value small consistency, one leaf turning toward the sun each morning, one root extending slightly deeper, one day of standing without retreat. These actions did not look impressive, but together they created endurance. The plant also learned to rest. On days when conditions were harsh, it conserved energy. It did not push itself unnecessarily. It understood now that rest was not failure. Rest allowed recovery. It allowed strength to renew rather than deplete. This balance between effort and rest became natural. The plant no longer feared slow days. It no longer interpreted stillness as stagnation. It recognized that even when growth could not be seen, preparation continued. Quiet seasons taught patience without frustration. They taught the plant how to remain steady when progress felt distant, how to trust unseen work, how to continue without applause. The plant noticed something subtle happening within itself. It no longer needed excitement to move forward. It no longer depended on visible success to feel aligned. It had learned how to grow in silence, and that skill stayed with it. Endurance became part of its identity. The plant stood through the season without asking when it would end. It accepted the pace. It accepted the repetition. It accepted the simplicity of daily care. In doing so, it built something stronger than speed: reliability. Reliability meant that when conditions changed, the plant would not panic. When challenges arrived, it would not collapse. It had practiced showing up through calm days, and that practice prepared it for difficult ones. As the season slowly shifted, the plant did not mark the change with excitement. It simply noticed that it felt steadier than before, more balanced, more capable. The growth had happened quietly. No single moment defined it. No dramatic event announced it. The plant had grown because it had stayed. This realization brought calm confidence. The plant understood now that some of the most important progress in life happens during quiet seasons, when nothing seems to move, when effort feels unnoticed, when patience is tested. Those seasons decide who endures. The plant stood in the field, unremarkable to passing eyes, yet deeply shaped by consistency. It had learned to grow without urgency, to improve without noise, to trust steady effort over dramatic change. And as time continued its gentle movement forward, the plant remained stronger than it looked, prepared in ways that could not yet be seen, and ready to continue growing, one quiet day at a time. Chapter 11: Becoming Strong Without Noticing. The change did not arrive with a clear moment. There was no sudden realization, no sharp shift that announced itself. The quiet plant did not wake one morning and declare itself different. Growth did not knock. It did not ask to be recognized. It arrived quietly, the way it always had. One day simply felt easier than the last. The plant stood in the field as it always did, lifting its leaves toward the light, adjusting gently to the air. The sun moved across the sky, warming its surface. The breeze passed through, brushing against its stem. These were familiar sensations, ordinary and expected. And yet something felt different. When the wind pressed a little harder than usual, the plant did not sway as much. When the soil dried slightly, its leaves did not weaken as quickly. The plant responded without effort, without thought. What once required attention now happened naturally. The plant paused, not out of concern but curiosity. It became aware that it no longer felt fragile. This awareness did not come with excitement. It arrived calmly, like noticing that a weight once heavy had become light. The plant did not compare itself to others. It did not look around for confirmation. It simply recognized a quiet truth within itself. It had changed. The stem, once thin and tentative, now held firm. It bent when it needed to, but it did not feel close to breaking. The roots below, unseen and uncelebrated, held the plant steady without strain. Balance came easily. The plant did not remember exactly when this strength had formed. It had not happened all at once. It had not happened during the storm or the first days above ground. It had happened during countless ordinary moments, through quiet seasons, through steady effort, through patience that asked for nothing in return. This realization brought no pride. The plant did not feel accomplished. It did not feel finished. It felt grounded. Strength, the plant understood, was not something it had achieved. It was something it had become by honoring the process, by staying, by not forcing, by continuing even when growth felt invisible. The plant looked back, not with regret, but with clarity. It remembered the days underground, when stillness felt uncertain. It remembered the fear of being left behind, the temptation to rush, the pressure to prove something before it was ready. Those feelings felt distant now, not because they were wrong, but because they were no longer needed. The plant had grown beyond them without realizing it. Patience had done its work. The plant noticed how it moved through each day now. There was no urgency, no sense of chasing something just ahead. It responded to what was present, not to what it feared might be missing. This calm was new. Before, growth had felt intentional, even effortful. Now it felt natural. The plant did not need to push itself to improve. Improvement came as a result of presence, not pressure. The field around it continued to change. Some plants thrived briefly and faded. Others adjusted slowly. The quiet plant observed these changes with understanding rather than concern. It did not see itself as separate from them. It saw itself as part of the same movement of time. The difference lay not in destiny, but in preparation. The plant understood now that fragility was not something that disappeared suddenly. It dissolved gradually as strength accumulated. Each small act of consistency, each quiet season endured, had contributed to this moment. And yet, the moment felt ordinary. There was no celebration, no marker to say, "You are strong now." Strength had become so integrated that it no longer needed recognition. It simply existed. The plant found comfort in this. It realized that many people might pass by without noticing anything special. They would see a plant standing quietly among others. Nothing about it demanded attention. And that was enough. The plant no longer sought validation. It no longer needed proof that its way had been correct. It trusted the path it had taken because it could feel the results within itself. Strength showed itself in subtle ways, in how the plant conserved energy without fear, in how it adapted to change without panic, in how it stood without tension. These qualities did not announce themselves, but they shaped everything. The plant understood now why patience was often misunderstood. From the outside, patience looked like delay. From within, it felt like alignment. Patience allowed growth to happen fully, without gaps or weakness. The plant had honored patience even when it did not understand it. That honor had been returned. The realization did not make the plant ambitious. It did not make it rush forward or aim higher suddenly. It simply allowed the plant to trust itself more deeply. Trust replaced effort. The plant did not worry about what was coming next. It did not plan for future growth in exact terms. It knew now that growth would continue as long as it remained attentive, consistent, and grounded. The roots below continued their quiet work, though the plant rarely thought about them anymore. They had become reliable, like a steady presence always there. The plant no longer questioned whether it could rely on them. It could. The quiet confidence that formed did not make the plant rigid. It made it flexible. Strength and softness existed together, balanced rather than opposed. The plant realized that fragility had once served a purpose. Fragility had required care. It had encouraged patience. It had slowed the plant down enough to prepare properly. Without fragility, the plant might have rushed and weakened itself. Now that fragility had transformed into resilience, not through force, not through struggle, but through time. The plant stood in the field, unchanged in appearance to those who glanced briefly, yet profoundly different from the seed it had once been. It did not feel older, it felt steadier. This steadiness did not demand attention. It did not seek acknowledgement. It simply allowed the plant to exist more fully in each moment. Growth, the plant learned, did not always feel like growth. Sometimes it felt like ease. Sometimes it felt like quiet. Sometimes it felt like nothing at all. But when the plant looked honestly within, it could sense the difference. The work of patience had completed something essential. The plant had become strong without noticing. And because it had not been watching for the moment of transformation, that strength felt natural, earned not through effort alone, but through trust. The plant did not pause to celebrate this understanding. It did not need to. It simply continued growing, just as it always had, quietly, steadily, and without fear, carrying its strength not as an achievement, but as a foundation for whatever seasons lay ahead. Chapter 12, Giving Without Speaking. Time continued its steady movement, and without announcing itself, the quiet plant became something more. Its stem thickened. Its reach widened. What had once been a modest presence grew into a form that others could notice, not because it demanded attention, but because it offered something valuable. The plant was no longer simply standing in the field. It was becoming a tree. The change felt natural. The tree did not feel taller in a way that invited pride. It felt broader, steadier, more rooted in purpose. Its branches extended outward slowly, shaped by seasons rather than ambition. Leaves spread gently, forming a canopy that filtered the light instead of blocking it. On warm days, shade appeared beneath it. At first, this shade went unnoticed. It fell quietly on the ground, moving with the sun. But over time, small signs of use appeared. The soil beneath the tree stayed cooler. Moisture lingered longer. The ground felt calmer, less exposed. The tree did nothing to create this intentionally. It simply existed as it was. One day, a small animal paused beneath its branches, resting briefly before moving on. Another day, birds perched lightly among the leaves, finding shelter from the wind. Later, travelers crossing the field slowed their steps, grateful for a place to stand without the heat pressing down. The tree offered all of this without effort. It did not invite, it did not announce, it did not keep track. Giving happened as a result of being. The tree remembered its time as a seed, hidden, uncertain, focused inward. Now its attention naturally extended outward, not from obligation, but from abundance. Strength had created capacity, and capacity allowed generosity. The tree did not speak. It did not explain its journey. It did not teach lessons in words. Yet those who passed by sensed something steady in its presence. The shade felt calm. The shelter felt safe. There was no pressure beneath its branches, no demand to hurry. The tree asked for nothing in return. It did not expect gratitude. It did not notice who stayed and who passed quickly. It did not distinguish between those who returned and those who never came back. Giving was not a transaction. It was simply what happened when strength met need. The tree did not lose anything by offering shade. Its roots continued to draw nourishment from the soil. Its leaves continued to gather light. The act of giving did not weaken it. In fact, it seemed to complete it. The tree felt aligned with its place in the field in a way it had never felt before. Purpose settled in quietly, not as a role to perform, but as a state of being. The tree did not compare itself to others. There were taller trees elsewhere, broader canopies, deeper shade. The quiet tree did not notice these differences. It gave what it could, where it stood without measuring. Some days the shade was small. Some days it stretched wider. Some days it shifted quickly as the sun moved. The tree did not control these changes. It accepted them. Giving did not require perfection. It required presence. Those who rested beneath the tree did not always recognize it as special. Many stayed only briefly. Some never looked up. Others moved on without a second thought. The tree did not mind. Its strength did not depend on being acknowledged. The tree understood now that true service rarely draws attention. It happens quietly, woven into ordinary moments. It supports without interrupting. It helps without claiming importance. The tree stood through heat and wind, rain and stillness, continuing to offer shelter simply by remaining upright and rooted. In doing so, it taught without teaching. Those who paused beneath it felt a moment of relief. That relief carried a message, though it had no words. Strength can be gentle. Stability can be generous. Presence can be enough. The tree did not need to explain these truths. They were felt, not spoken. The seasons continued to pass. Leaves fell and returned. Branches adjusted. The tree grew more familiar to the field, becoming part of its rhythm. The ground beneath it changed slightly, enriched by what the tree shed naturally. Even without intention, the tree contributed. Giving extended beyond shade. It gave space. It gave calm. It gave continuity. The tree did not track how much it gave. It did not fear running out. Its giving came from balance, not sacrifice. Because it had grown slowly and prepared deeply, it had more than enough to share. This was the reward of patience, not recognition, not status, but usefulness. The tree did not think of itself as strong. It thought of itself as steady. Strength had become background, a quiet support rather than a feature to display. Those who needed shade found it. Those who did not passed by. Life continued. The tree remained. It did not chase meaning. Meaning had arrived naturally, carried on the simple act of standing and offering what it could. In silence, the tree served. It asked nothing. It explained nothing. It simply stayed. And in staying, it fulfilled a purpose far greater than visibility, a purpose rooted not in words or effort, but in quiet strength, shared freely and without condition. The tree had learned what the seed could not have known in the beginning, that the deepest influence often comes not from what is said or shown, but from what is steadily given, day after day, without needing to be noticed. Chapter 13, Lasting While Others Pass. Time continued to move, as it always did, without asking for permission. Seasons shifted gently around the tree. Warm days softened into cooler ones. Rain came and went. The field changed its colors, then changed them again. Nothing stayed fixed for long, and yet the tree remained. It did not remain unchanged. Its leaves fell when the season asked them to. New ones grew when the time was right. Its branches adjusted slowly, shaped by years of wind and light. The tree did not resist these changes. It accepted them as part of continuing, not as signs of loss. Around it, the field told many stories. Plants that had once grown quickly and drawn attention faded just as quickly. Some thrived briefly, filling the space with color and movement, only to disappear when conditions shifted. Others struggled to adapt and slowly gave way to new growth. The ground was never empty for long. Life moved in cycles. The tree watched this without judgment. It had learned that coming and going were natural parts of growth. Not every life was meant to last long, and not every short presence lacked value. Still, there was a difference. The tree noticed how attention followed speed. New growth often attracted eyes. Fresh leaves, bright colors, rapid change. These things were easy to admire. People paused for what stood out. The field responded quickly to what appeared impressive. Then attention moved on. What remained after attention passed was quieter. The tree understood this now. It had never grown for attention, and because of that, it had never depended on it. Endurance had shaped it differently. While others rose quickly and faded, the tree continued its steady presence. It did not dominate the field. It did not compete for notice. It simply stayed, season after season, offering shade, shelter, and stability without interruption. The value of this became clearer with time. Travelers returned to the tree year after year, not because it was new, but because it was reliable. Animals learned its shape, its branches, its quiet safety. The soil beneath it grew richer, holding memory and nourishment from years of fallen leaves. The tree's impact deepened rather than expanded. It did not spread quickly across the field. It did not multiply its presence dramatically. Instead, it grew roots deeper into the land and into the lives that passed near it. Its influence was subtle, cumulative, and enduring. This was the nature of lasting things. They rarely demanded attention. They earned trust. The tree remembered a time when speed had seemed important, when being seen had felt urgent. Those days felt distant now, not because they were wrong, but because they were incomplete. Attention, the tree understood, was fleeting. It moved easily from one thing to another, drawn by novelty and change. Endurance required something else entirely. It required patience, consistency, and the willingness to remain when nothing exciting happened. The tree had practiced this without realizing it. By growing slowly, by staying present, by continuing through quiet seasons. Many plants around the tree had shone brightly for a short time. Their success had been real but temporary. The tree did not see this as failure. It saw it as a different kind of journey, one shaped by immediacy rather than longevity. Each path carried its own cost. The cost of speed was instability. The cost of endurance was invisibility. The tree had accepted its cost long ago. It had grown accustomed to being overlooked. That invisibility had protected it from pressure and allowed it to develop fully. Now it no longer felt overlooked. It felt established. Established did not mean celebrated. It meant rooted. The tree noticed how the field relied on it in quiet ways. When storms came, it stood firm, offering a point of reference in the chaos. When heat pressed down, its shade became a place of pause. When time passed, its presence created continuity. Continuity mattered more than attention. The tree did not regret the years it had spent unnoticed. Those years had built the strength that allowed it to last. Had it chased attention early, it might not have survived long enough to matter later. This realization felt steady and calm. The tree did not compare itself to what passed. It did not measure its worth by how many seasons it had outlived others. It simply recognized that its way of growing had allowed it to remain when others could not. Remaining was not about resisting change. It was about adapting without losing integrity. The tree adapted constantly, shedding, renewing, adjusting. But its core stayed firm. Its roots held. Its presence remained dependable. This balance between change and stability defined its endurance. The field continued to shift. New plants appeared, full of energy and promise. They rose quickly, drawing attention and admiration. The tree watched them with gentle curiosity, not envy. It had learned that every beginning carries excitement, and every excitement eventually settles. The tree did not rush to compete with what was new. It trusted time. Time revealed what lasted. As years passed, the tree became part of the field's memory. It was no longer just a tree. It was a constant, a reference point, something that could be counted on without being noticed. This kind of impact was quiet but profound. Those who had grown up with the tree remembered it even when they no longer visited. Those who returned after long absences found comfort in its familiarity. The tree marked time not by growth spurts, but by presence. Endurance shaped meaning differently than success ever could. Success attracted attention. Endurance created trust. The tree understood now that lasting impact was rarely dramatic. It accumulated slowly, built from reliability rather than excitement. It required staying when leaving would be easier, continuing when stopping would go unnoticed. The tree had done this without intention. It had simply followed its nature, shaped by patience and preparation. And in doing so, it had become something that endured. The field would continue to change. One day even the tree would change in ways it could not yet imagine. Nothing escaped time entirely. But for now the tree remained steady and rooted, offering continuity in a world of movement. It did not need attention to justify its existence. Its presence was enough. As others came and went, rose and faded, the tree stood quietly among them, not superior, not separate, but lasting. And in that lasting, it carried a quiet truth the seed could never have known at the beginning, that what endures may not shine the brightest, but it shapes the ground long after the light has moved on. The tree remained, and in remaining, it mattered. Chapter 14. Quiet Influence. The seasons continued as they always did, carrying change without announcement. Leaves fell, returned, and fell again. Wind passed through the field, familiar with every branch of the tree. Time left its marks gently, not as damage, but as depth. One season, something new began to happen near the tree. Seeds fell. They dropped softly from nearby plants, carried by wind or released by chance. Some landed close to the tree's roots. Others rested just beyond its shade. They did not arrive with intention or plan. They simply arrived, finding places where the earth was open enough to receive them. The tree did not notice them at first. It had learned not to watch for outcomes. It stood as it always had, offering shade, shelter, and steadiness. The ground beneath it remained cool and calm. Moisture lingered longer there. The soil held nutrients gathered over many seasons. In time, the seeds began to respond. Small movements stirred beneath the surface. Quiet changes took place underground, much like they once had for the tree itself. Tiny roots reached out tentatively. Growth began without sound or ceremony. The tree did not instruct them. It did not guide their direction. It did not tell them when to grow or how fast. It offered no rules, no expectations. It simply remained present, unchanged in its way of being. That presence was enough. The seeds felt the difference without understanding it. The soil near the tree felt safer, more balanced. The light filtering through its leaves was gentle, not harsh. The ground held moisture evenly, neither dry nor flooded. Conditions were not perfect, but they were supportive. The seeds grew quietly. Each one followed its own pace. Some stirred quickly, others waited longer. None were rushed, none were forced. They responded naturally to what surrounded them. The tree watched without interference. It did not feel responsible for their growth. It did not take credit for it. The tree understood that influence did not mean control. It meant creating space where growth could happen freely. This was leadership without direction. The tree did not stand as an example intentionally. It had not set out to teach or guide. It had simply lived in alignment with its nature, rooted, patient, steady. That alignment shaped the environment around it, and the environment shaped those within it. The seeds absorbed this quietly. They did not look to the tree as something to imitate. They did not try to grow exactly as it had grown. Each seed carried its own design, its own rhythm. Yet all of them benefited from the same calm conditions the tree provided. The influence passed without words. As the seeds grew, they did not struggle as much with comparison. The space felt less crowded by urgency. Growth happened inwardly first, unnoticed by the surface. The seeds learned patience without being taught it. They learned stillness by experiencing it. The tree remained silent. It did not watch for progress. It did not count successes. It did not worry about outcomes. It trusted the process, just as it had once learned to trust its own. Some seeds would grow strong. Some would not last. Some would take longer than expected. The tree accepted all of it. Quiet influence did not demand results. The field around the tree began to change slowly. New growth appeared, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily. The presence of the tree shaped the space over time, not by expanding aggressively, but by remaining consistent. Those who passed through the field noticed something subtle. The area near the tree felt calmer. Growth there seemed less frantic. Plants did not compete as fiercely for light. They leaned toward open space without urgency. There was room to exist without rushing. The tree did not claim this effect. It did not feel proud. It did not feel wise. It simply stood, rooted in the same patience that had once guided it underground. The seeds grew in different ways. Some stayed close, finding comfort in the familiar shade. Others reached outward, exploring spaces beyond. The tree did not pull them toward itself. It did not hold them back. Influence did not bind, it supported. This freedom mattered. The seeds learned that strength did not need to be loud, that growth did not need instruction, that stability could be felt without being explained. Wisdom moved quietly through the soil. It passed not as advice, but as atmosphere, not as commands, but as conditions. The tree did not shape the seed's choices. It shaped the space in which choices could be made calmly. The tree reflected on its own beginnings. It remembered the silence underground, the waiting, the unseen work. It recognized the same quiet beginnings forming beneath its branches now. The cycle continued, not through effort, but through presence. Leadership, the tree realized, did not require visibility. It required consistency, to remain steady when others rushed, to remain patient when others demanded results, to remain grounded when others sought attention. The tree had done this without planning to. Now the results unfolded naturally. The seeds did not know they were learning. They did not feel guided. They simply grew in an environment shaped by quiet strength. The tree did not intervene when challenges came. When the sun burned hotter, the shade softened its impact. When rain fell heavily, the roots held the soil firm. When winds passed through, the branches filtered their force. Protection happened without control. The tree did not shield the seeds from all difficulty. It allowed them to experience pressure in manageable ways. It did not remove challenge. It reduced harm. This balance allowed resilience to form. The seeds learned through experience, not instruction. They adapted to light and shadow, moisture and dryness. Their roots learned to navigate soil shaped by time rather than disturbance. The tree remained. It did not measure its influence by how many seeds grew nearby. It did not watch for legacy. Influence was not a goal. It was a consequence of how the tree had chosen to exist, quietly, steadily, without force. The field continued its movement. Seasons shifted again. Some seeds rose above the soil. Others waited. Life unfolded in many directions. The tree did not hurry any of it. It stood as it always had, offering what it could by being what it was. And in that presence, without words or instruction, wisdom passed on, slowly, gently, and freely. The tree did not need to speak. Its influence had already taken root. Chapter 15, The Lesson Beneath the Soil. Beneath the tree, beneath the shade in the seasons, the soil remained. It held memory quietly. Layers of earth pressed together, carrying the imprint of roots that had grown, struggled, adapted, and endured. The ground did not speak of what had passed, yet everything that had happened lived within it: softened leaves, broken stems, patient roots, and time itself. This was where beginnings waited. Small seeds rested there now, scattered gently by chance and wind. They lay unseen, wrapped in darkness, surrounded by the same silence that had once held the tree. Nothing marked them as special. Nothing distinguished one from another. To the surface world, they did not yet exist, and that was exactly as it should be. The soil did not rush them. It did not demand signs of progress. It offered what it always had: support, pressure, protection, and time. The seeds rested within it, feeling the slow rhythms of warmth and moisture, learning stillness before movement. From above, nothing appeared to change. The tree stood quietly, offering shade as it always had. The field continued its gentle cycle of growth and rest. Life moved forward in visible ways, while new beginnings formed where no one looked. The lesson lived here, not in the height of the tree, not in the span of its branches, but in the unseen work beneath it all. Growth that lasted had never been hurried. It had never announced itself early. It had taken shape slowly, built layer by layer in silence. The soil understood this truth without needing to explain it. The seeds did not know what they would become. They did not know how long they would wait or what challenges would come. They did not know whether they would rise quickly or slowly, whether they would be noticed or overlooked. None of that mattered yet. What mattered was that they were placed where growth could happen correctly. The soil did not promise ease. It promised possibility. Waiting was part of that promise. In the darkness, the seeds would learn patience before ambition. They would learn grounding before reaching. They would learn to listen before moving. These lessons could not be taught in the open air. They belonged to the hidden places. This was where depth formed. Depth did not come from speed. It came from time spent unseen, from effort without reward, from preparation without recognition. The soil shaped these qualities gently, without instruction. Patience created strength here, not by force, but by alignment. The seeds would feel moments of pressure, moments of doubt, moments of stillness that felt endless. They would not always understand why nothing seemed to happen. They might question their worth in the quiet. The soil would not answer those questions directly. Instead, it would continue doing what it always did, holding, supporting, allowing. And in that allowance, strength would form. The lesson was simple, but not easy. Lasting things grow quietly. They do not compete for attention before they are ready. They do not rush toward visibility at the cost of stability. They do not measure themselves against what rises faster or shines brighter. They honor their own timing. The soil had seen many stories unfold. Some beginnings rose quickly and faded. Others waited longer and endured. None were wasted. Each path carried meaning. Each growth left something behind. But the deepest impact always came from what had been prepared carefully. Roots that grew slowly held firm. Lives shaped in silence lasted longer. Strength built without witnesses endured storms without breaking. The soil remembered this. It did not celebrate outcomes. It did not keep score. It simply continued offering a place where growth could happen truthfully, without pressure to perform. The seeds rested, unaware of the future waiting within them. Above the tree remained a quiet presence, steady and unremarkable to passing eyes. It did not point to itself as an example. It did not explain its journey. It simply stood, shaped by patience, sustained by depth. The soil beneath it held the beginning and the ending of the same lesson. That what grows slowly learns to hold. That what waits learns to endure. That what is built quietly often lasts the longest. There was no need to repeat the story. The truth did not require retelling. It existed in the ground, in the roots, in the steady presence of things that did not rush to be seen. The seeds would learn in time. For now they rested. And in that rest, unnoticed, uncelebrated, and unseen, the next chapter of quiet strength was already beginning.